Well, hello, everybody. Welcome again. I'm excited to have another Chip Chat. We have, as I've said before, a really exciting group of guests lined up for this season, especially everything going on in commercial and residential real estate. It could not be more timely to have subject matter experts in the space sharing what's going on, what they're seeing on the front lines, and hopefully giving our listeners some good takeaways. Today, I have Jenny Johnston with PRG Real Estate Commercial Property Advisors. I know it's PR. I know you're
Well,
executive vice president, so we're talking to someone. We're talking to a big timer at PRG. But I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and let her tell her background, and then we're going to get into our Q&A and talk about some really cool stuff.
thank you, Chip. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And yes, it's PRG, Commercial Property Advisors. And I've been with PRG for over 5 years now. This is a second act for me. I moved to Louisville in 2003 from California. I'm from New York originally and moved here from the Bay Area to work for my family's business, which is located here. This is a fourth generation family business, and it's my siblings who now own the business are in California, but for a variety of reasons, the headquarters are here. So I did that for about 15 years. I raised a couple of kids in that time, and then they got older, and I was ready to do something for me. And at the time, literally did not know what commercial real estate was. Someone suggested I get into commercial real estate, and my response was, "What's commercial real estate?" I was an investor at the time. I had apartment buildings, but I didn't even know that there was a name for it. So anyway, I got licensed and connected with PRG, and it's been very fun. I work really
Awesome.
hard, and I love it.
Well, so wait, so when exactly did you transition from being on the investment side to actually being on the brokerage side?
I got licensed in January of 2018.
Okay. Okay. Wow. I mean, I feel like it was just yesterday, so that's sort of crazy.
I know.
Um, Well, that's interesting. So you said so you sort of family business came. Tell me a little bit about sort of just getting started into the business. Some of the first things that you sort of did as new to the space. You're a woman in commercial real estate, which let's be honest, 10 years ago we was really far fetched, and you're breaking through barriers and you're opening doors in terms of just how you're building your business. Tell me a couple of things that you did at the start that you think that helped set you on a good foundation to really build your business.
Sure. So I remember when I started, I sort of, had that imposter syndrome. Like, I don't, what can I possibly offer my clients that how can I bring value to my clients? And I think it was sort of twofold. For one thing, the nice thing about being at PRG is we're very collaborative here. And so I really got to lean on mentors and experts in the industry who were very supportive. And when I first was procuring business, and still a lot now, I try to, we work in teams. So one thing that we could do is I could bring someone in to work with me who, was bringing that level of experience and expertise, but because I was relatively new, I had more bandwidth, I had more energy, I had availability to, pound the pavement for these clients. So in some ways it was, in my opinion, best for the client because they had a little bit of mix of, someone who was new and motivated and someone who was seasoned and expert. And slowly I went from being the newbie green person who asked a lot of questions to someone who has, I think, just a stronger level of ability and expertise and experience in the field now. And now, the role is a little bit flipped. I try to help others who are coming into our office now.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some of that success because in talking to you and working with you, as I shared with you like a month ago when we were talking at an event, you are a bit of an anomaly, I would share, in 2023 from the agents and brokers that I've been working with for years and years and years. A lot of people are having a challenging 2023. It's the market's pivoted. We all know it's been very well documented what's happened with interest rates. We've got sort of this buyer seller syndrome where sellers still want to hang on to old school pricing, and buyers now realize that because of interest rates and other things, the cap rates need to move around a little bit. And so there's just a little bit of what I like to call we're grinding. It's a definite grinding of the of the gears. And so,
Mhm.
how have you been able to lubricate those gears, get so many deals done, and have a record year in a really challenging environment?
Yeah, I mean, I am eternally grateful for my clients who have trust in me. I try to work really hard to make my clients happy and meet their needs, and that has enabled me to have, I think, sustaining relationships with clients. And so I have a lot of repeat business, a lot of referral business, and that has been very fruitful. The other thing is, as you mentioned, I mean, the industry is changing. We're in a transition, but that doesn't mean there's not opportunity, right? And so, one of the things that we like to do here is be nimble and try to and meet that opportunity. So, we're not pigeonholed into a specific asset class or a specific approach to our business. We can really meet the market. And I think that's what we've been doing. I've been doing.
Cool. So dig a little deeper on that. And one of the things I do admire about you specifically and your team is that you do cover so many different classes. I follow you heavily on LinkedIn and some other platforms, and seeing sort of what you're closing, what you're working on. And I notice it's all over. It could be a duplex, or it could be a 40-plex, or it could be a warehouse, or it could be um, tell me what you're seeing in terms of some of those channels. If there's some trends that you're noticing, if sellers are softening up a little bit, if you're seeing investors tend to migrate into certain asset classes with a little bit more, aggressiveness, or you know where I'm going with this,
Yeah.
like because we can definitely see pullbacks in certain areas, like office. I would share has
Yeah.
really had some challenges, and even sometimes even retail. We've seen a lot of those deals just seem to be a lot harder to get done. But share with me what you're seeing out there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the business right now is so asset class driven. I mean, it's probably not new to your listeners to hear, but industrial and multifamily are very strong, very desirable asset classes right now. And we have some downtown office buildings that I have listed now, working to sell or lease, and it's challenging. I mean, it's definitely a challenge. It's not only the investors, but it's the banks. I'm working on a large off market deal for a downtown office right now, and the buyers are actually planning on putting up 50% of the collateral, and they have a whole plan in place to convert the office building to multifamily. They've got tenants in place. I mean, it's a really solid plan, and banks are so hesitant to try to work with them. I think they hear downtown office, and it's scary.
Are you doing anything with your sellers to sort of prepare them for the marketplace? I know you do a lot of off market, which I know a lot of other agents get jealous of. How does she find all these deals? And I'm not going to have you tell every trade secret. Uh, but are there some things that you do to prepare your sellers for the market that's currently going on, just so that their expectations, whether it be pricing or just the deal flow itself,
Yeah.
that helps maybe make it just keep it between the rails better than having expectations of a 30 or 45-day close, which in a lot of cases right now just it isn't really realistic unless you just have the perfect scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I work for the clients, and the clients get the ultimate say on the direction they want to go when we go on market or off market on a sale. But I often tell them it's a little bit of art and a little bit of science when determining the best price, because there's comps and there's data that we can use to try to identify the appropriate price. But there's also gut, and there's also just a sense of working in this space and knowing where the market is more intuitively. And oftentimes it's a mix, it's a blend in determining that. And I always try to set expectations for the sellers. I mean, often I tell them we can start wherever they want, it's up to them, but let's just keep in mind that it might be an aggressive starting place, and be prepared to be flexible if we need to be.
Good stuff. Have you had any? One of the value adds that I see a lot. A lot of times, people undervalue potentially all the stakeholders in the process. Oh, everybody's getting over, getting paid, these handsome commissions and so forth. But we also do a lot of stuff behind the scenes that really doesn't even get sort of nobody, and sometimes in my mind even really recognizes it, and that's fine. As I always say, a good deal is one where a lot of the issues have been quietly handled,
Mhm.
because it keeps sort of the buyer and the seller from potential inflection points. But if you could share with the listeners maybe an interesting deal recently that you've done where you had to do some sort of fancy footwork to keep the deal on, heading in the right direction, so that it didn't, go sideways or go into the ditch, as I like to say. And a lot of them recently, and mainly banking related, candidly, and then sometimes inspection related, is what we're seeing that really is pitching some of these deals in the ditch.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Chip. And you're catching me off guard. I know that's funny you say that because literally just the other day I was thinking about that, but I think you're gonna have to delete this one. I don't have like a good one for you off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's I just asked that because I think people a lot of times don't understand, like, people on the sidelines that just think real estate sort of plug and play. And,
Yes.
I went this, it just, all of the nooks and crannies of a deal and trying to keep it together. And the fact of it is that a lot of times, in some cases, you or whomever's involved, you play psychologist, you play,
Yes.
you play a lot of things. I mean, you could be down, tracing down where a survey issue might be, or having to talk to a neighbor about getting an access agreement signed. I mean, there's just a lot of nuance that goes on sort of underneath, behind the scenes, that I don't think people understand or appreciate when it comes to what the agents do at the front lines.
I think you're right. And I think maybe one reason why I'm drawing a blank is because I do so much of it that it just feels normal, that
Right,
it doesn't
right.
even feel exceptional. But I would agree. I mean, I think it's people get cavalier, like, oh, you agents, you make so much for making a phone call or whatever it is. And that's not the case at all. I feel like I work very hard. I work 24/7, and I try to, I feel like I add value to my clients. And one way that I try to make sure that they understand the value isn't necessarily that I'm filling them in with every bit of minutia, but I think strong and frequent communication is important. So my client understands they don't necessarily need to be worried about it, but they need to know what's happening. And I think I try to put myself in their perspective, like, what are they thinking right now? What do they want to know? And I try to preemptively answer those questions and respond to them before they even have to ask, so that they know that they are top of mind for me.
That's great. And I think, when I've worked with you personally in the past, one thing that I do appreciate is how communication oriented you are. And even if it's just for a check in, how's this deal? Are we still on pace?
Mhm.
Title back, those type of things. Because even though a lot of people candidly sort of assume that, okay, well, if I don't hear anything, then everything's going to be fine. It's not always that way. And a little check in can push something back top of mind. Oh, yeah, we need to follow up on that. Or, oh yeah, I'm still waiting to hear back from that. And then it's a great opportunity for you to go back to your client and say, hey, I just checked in and here's where we are. We're still waiting on, one more thing from the appraiser. We've got one more thing coming in on title. I know the lender is still, working on this. And those communications are what I think really keep a deal, once again, moving in the right direction, and keep those emotional, ebbs and flows to a minimum. Because in a vacuum of communication, that's typically when there's issues. So good stuff there.
I
Um,
agree 100%. And just to add to that, I mean, you mentioned earlier in this conversation about it's being somewhat unique in this industry as being a woman in this industry. And I'm not saying all men are bad communicators or all women are good communicators, but that might be something that has helped me differentiate myself, is that perhaps it's women's intuition, whatever you want to call it. I do feel like I can help in the communication piece.
I will agree with you 1,000% on that, and I know my wife would as well. Let's talk about a couple of things that you do, from a strategic standpoint. I know as in this space, there's a lot of autonomy. Obviously, you're your own manager, boss, whatever you want to call it. It's not like we have sort of a defined schedule and you don't come in, clock out. And I think some people really in a market like this, it can be it can get challenging to motivate yourself.
Mhm.
You're facing a lot more rejection maybe than you traditionally had faced. You're definitely facing a harder marketplace to go turnover opportunities. That's just a numbers game. I'm not saying anything out of school there. It's been well documented the number of transactions both on the commercial and residential side are going to be down in the neighborhood of 30-40% depending on which space and which lens you use. What are some of the things you do on a daily basis maybe to help you sort of stay on strategy? Obviously, the plan is working because of your results, but share with the audience a couple things that you do to sort of keep that cadence moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, certainly when I was starting out and trying to build my business from zero, it can be very challenging and demoralizing because, for every success, there's three rejections. And I'm really thankful and appreciative to my colleagues because they, especially at that time, were very supportive. They gave me the time and support that I needed to help build my business. And now I try to maintain it. I'm pretty type A when it comes to organizing my day and scheduling my day. And I busy begets busy, right? So I try to just maintain momentum, and the momentum builds. If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, and it's this is sort of a theme. I had a guest on last week, and we were talking about, especially in a marketplace where there maybe are some more air pockets, if you want to call it that, in terms of just
Mhm.
it just there's not a funnel of leads like just flowing like candidly
Yeah.
we had for a while, and so um, that momentum is so important because if you're not careful you start to create a larger air pocket if you're
Hmm.
not, and sometimes you have to pivot. Sometimes you might candidly take a deal that maybe you would have passed on before. Maybe you take a client that you maybe would have passed off before, whatever. But you do that with the thought and the strategy around keeping the deal flow, being
100%.
involved. Because I always said, and I still, and if you listen to podcasts going back 5 years, deals lead to other deals. If you're not doing transactions, it's hard to get into the game. If you're sitting back on the sidelines and you're analyzing and you're building your lead farm and you're doing things that the textbook tells you and maybe other people tell you, that's great, and that is definitely one leg of the stool. But the most important leg of the stool is the transactional activity, working with other brokers, working with potential other sellers, because you never know where that's going to take you. One listing might, and I wouldn't mind you sharing, you've had a couple of larger scale investors that I'm aware of high frequency. Um, if you don't mind sharing, like maybe a little trick how you got one or something. I mean, was it because I know you parlayed some good relationships.
And I mean, again, I really just try to demonstrate good work and appreciation to my clients. I couldn't be more grateful for my relationships, and I think the best way to express that gratitude is to work hard and to be available and be responsive and be communicative. And I don't know if it's luck or work or whatever it's
What do
been,
they
but
always say though? Luck is when preparation meets
right.
opportunity. I mean,
Yes.
that's the
Yeah.
real definition of luck. I mean, they always say I'd rather be lucky than good. I think the real meaning is I'd rather prepare a lot and put myself in the position of opportunity. If I
Yeah.
do that, then good things will happen. So that no, you're definitely luck is a creative of activities. I know you took on a mentoree recently. Would you share with the audience just younger people coming into the space? This is a different time. I
Yeah.
think the days of the Instagram post and the excitement around, how easy real estate is. Those are in our rearview mirror, at least for
Yeah.
the near term future, and maybe for a longer term. And so you just share with us, how that's going and what your thoughts are around some of the newer, especially younger adults, because we
Yeah.
need them. We still need that lifeline into the industry.
Yeah, and it's actually, I've been thinking a lot because we bring new associates in at PRG. Sometimes they're younger, sometimes they're older, but whatever it is, it's so hard to predict who is going to be successful and who isn't. And there is no formula. There just isn't. And, we try to meet with people and ask the right questions and do the right due diligence and vet them appropriately. And sometimes we have people who come in and kick butt, and then sometimes it's just hard business to get started, and the runway is so long and the barrier to entry can be high. So yeah, we've got a couple of new associates in our office who are on the younger side, but they, like I think I was when I first started, they've got a lot of energy and a lot of motivation and have the bandwidth to hustle. And to your point, you're right. I mean, you can't. I'm going to retire in a few years. We need people. You need a pipeline of talent, and so far, it doesn't hurt if someone comes in and they've got some good family connections. I mean, let's face it, this town is this town, and relationships matter. So that's always a benefit, but it's not a requisite. I think anyone with the right skill set, and what exactly that skill set is, I couldn't tell you because I don't know, but anyone could do it. It just, you got to have the grit, I think.
Yeah, yeah, no, and one of the things though I would add on to that is, and this speaks volumes of is that this person vetted out and they did some due diligence of what group they wanted to join, and PRG is, I think, has a track record of recruiting in younger talent, all sorts of talent, but all, putting together a diverse team of young professionals, both seasoned experience from different backgrounds. And I think that's what's been a real attribute of the success and sustainability that PRG has. As we know, it's not going to work out for everybody. And that's true in any industry. And I share that, even in the title space, we have people that come in and they get frustrated, and we have those sit downs where it's like, hey, this isn't for everyone, and if it's not for you, that's not a bad thing. Like, that's not, that isn't saying anything negative towards the person. It's just some people are wired a certain way, and it doesn't all those wires don't always marry up to the
Hmm.
to the space, because as you said earlier in the podcast, and is it's a 24/7 job. On Saturdays and Sundays, when some of our peers get to turn their phones off or get to really just step away, candidly, that is probably not going to serve most real estate professionals. And I admire those that can do that. I just don't know many of them that are, still
Yeah.
around doing it. So, if there's a secret there, I'm all for it. But I know you're not doing that, because I text with you on all hours and days, and I know that you are, constantly working towards the goal, which is to get to the closing table, because that's really where we got it. That's what everybody is working to. And if you don't have that as your end goal, then you're gonna waste a lot of people's time.
I think you're right. I think you have to be motivated by that closing. I mean, that's one of the things that I find rewarding about being in this industry is that it's cyclical. There's a start, there's a finish, there's a goal, there's an accomplishment. It's quantifiable. Not that the commission is, it doesn't matter. It could be dollars or points or ping pong balls, whatever it is. It's a measure of achievement, and that is very rewarding. And I think you're right as far as being available all the time. I have thought in the past and said in the past that I don't think I could have done this job when my kids were little, because it is all encompassing, at least for me. And
Yeah.
they're at an age where the less I'm around, the better, as far as they're concerned. So, it's a win-win. But when they were little and actually liked me and wanted to be around me, then it would have
I
been
know the feeling. I know
hard.
the feeling. Well, that's that, and I think you do working with you, you talked about that sort of goal, and it can be ping pong balls. There is a bit of, I think you have to have that sort of competitive winning
Mhm.
spirit. It's not winning against somebody else at all. It's about winning, getting to that finish line, and that's what I really, I think that's what does separate some of the best in our business from some of the people that maybe just they're good but they don't quite, because as I always say, if you can condense a closing period, let's just say by 3 days, and let's just say your goal is to close 20 deals in a year, just raw math. I mean, think about the power of that. That's 60
Mhm.
days worth of biz. If you did 20 deals and you were able to save 3 days, that's 60 days that you've regained of capacity potentially. And that's probably the difference between closing two or three more deals in that year. And then you can do the math and just sort of see where you could be. So I think it's so important that people stay focused on what is that end goal, and how are we going to get there, and how are we going to do it in a constructive way. I mean, there's points where you got to make sure everybody, all the stakeholders, are prepared and ready. But if you lay that out and you stay on that course, it's a pretty powerful approach that I really feel like a lot of people don't have. And it's, to me, it's frustrating because I'm like, let's just go, guys. Come on. Like, let's get this thing done.
Yeah.
So cool.
I think
Well,
you're
before
right.
I
I
let
think
you
it's
go,
either
go
like
ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think you're right. You either have to, live for the deal or, and it's okay if you don't, but it is an element of needed for success.
Some people call it a drug too, and
Yeah,
it's a little
exactly.
bit,
It's like a hit.
it's yeah, yeah. And I will say, man, the one of the greatest sort of lifts, if you can get, is when you share this, I'm sure, is when you've been working on a client for a long time. You've just invested. You've provided value, at least in your mind, of how you can, and they finally give you that opportunity. It's like,
100%.
whoa,
A 100%. It is
it's
very motivating and very rewarding.
yeah. Well, before we let you go, a couple things. If there was anything, if you have any passion projects you'd like to share with the audience, anything that you do, sort of, I know you're involved in some different organizations. If you'd like to share any about that, and then the last thing we'll do is just give your contact information so people can follow up if they want to have any follow up questions or want to talk to you about any potential opportunities to work together.
Well, thank you. I'm on the board. I actually just came this afternoon from a meeting at for WCRE, Women in Commercial Real Estate. I think it's a great organization. I like to support them. I am I'll be supporting Youth Build at their
Oh
annual
yeah, love it.
breakfast. Yeah, I'm a table captain for
Nice,
their
awesome.
December event. I've just lately have been learning more about everything that Youth Build does, and it is so impressive. So it's relatively new to my radar, but I've been so impressed. So I'm excited to support them in December. And how to find me? Do you want my cell phone number? What do you?
I would give out like email, and then your LinkedIn is also good, but email I think is probably the best.
Yeah, email is Jenny at prgproperty.com, or you can go to prgproperty.com. LinkedIn is, I don't know, Jenny Johnston in
Yep.
Louisville. I don't know how
Yeah,
many
yeah.
there
There
are.
there are some Jenny Johnsons, but look for the one that has a lot of really good posts and kicks butt and takes names. Well, thanks again for joining us. Hopefully, our listeners got some good takeaways. I'm sure they did. There's a lot of inspirational stuff in there as well, just by the fact that, once again, I repeat, in 2023, Jenny is having her record best year. If that's not motivating for some people listening, then you're tone deaf, because it is for me. Because sometimes I get sucked into the headlines and I start whimpering around. I've been doing this too long and been through a couple cycles, and you just sometimes get sort of hardened to it. So whenever I talk to somebody who's got positive energy and a positive story to tell, I'm like, yay, this is the energy I need. This helps me sort of, dust myself off and get back into into the ring, as they say.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for having me.
Well, signing off for another Chip Chat episode, and we'll catch you next time.